Hi everyone, this is Stacy Sunletter. I'm host of How to Fight CPS and Win the New York edition. I have a special guest with me today that many people that know me know about Lizzie, but for those who don't know her, she's a very special friend who's been through a lot of turmoil and and has become an advocate herself. And yesterday we both attended the vigil for Catherine Kazanoff, and Lizzie is the one who orchestrated the entire event. Lizzie's here to share her story, and one thing that I didn't realize that CPS was also involved with her case on the many layers of things that occurred. So she's here to talk about that and share that aspect of her story as well. So Lizzie, if you want to start.
Thanks.
And say how we know each other and kind of what's happened.
Yeah, so Stacy and I met through this horrific court corruption. We both found each other because at the time I was doing podcasts and I had a very large social media following, which my abuser then had taken down. And so I had Stacy on as a guest, and she was telling me her story. My story is pretty horrific. I'm a Columbia University graduate, mom of 3 kids. We live in New York, up in Westchester County. 2 of my children were in private school. One was in public school. Very involved in my children's lives. They were extremely successful, doing well in school, doing well in sports, captain of the tennis team, captain of the soccer teams, model UN, whatever you want to, accolades you want to try and promote to say that there's something good going on in that household. The children are seemingly
thriving.
May 2020, I found out my husband, who I had known my whole life, since meeting him, had been abused as a child and was sent away on weekend trips with an adult man. His name was Ronald Berry, who had a weekend group of Barry's boys. And Barry's boys were these boys that of troubled boy teens that Mr. Berry, Ronald Berry, the vice principal of Syosset High School, would take away on weekend trips, get drunk, and then, climb into bed with them. But nothing happened. So there were these red flags that occurred in my life with my husband and his behavior towards children. And I always associated it naively as Stockholm Syndrome, that he himself was abused and didn't actually understand appropriate behavior around children, which is partially true. But the whole truth is obviously that he himself was indoctrinated into that practice and believed that that was an acceptable form of love between an adult man and a child. And being that I was married to him and we had a very active life together, never even considered that to be a possibility, right? You didn't think that somebody, clearly a woman, who would be attracted to me would also be attracted to children and engage in that level of activity. So in May of 2020, I found online child pornography and sexual solicitation of minors on my husband's iPad. And it completely rocked my world. It, first of all, woke me up, and it immediately answered all of the questions. Like, I'm like, why does he do that? I don't understand. Like, why does he keep walking into the bath? I told him a million times not to walk in on the kids in the shower. Why does he keep doing that? That's so weird. And he'd be like, oh, I forgot you told me they're too old not to do that anymore.
The same thing
right.
happen.
Right. Why do you keep walking around the house with your boxers and your junk falls out? Like, that's not okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, sorry. My parents were always like this. So, I guess I thought it wasn't a big deal. Instantly, I was like, oh my God, in my own home, right underneath my nose. And I'm a very strong woman, and I'm a strong advocate for children's rights. And I've always been an advocate against pedophilia, to the point where I would get the police reports of the sexual offenders in the area before I moved anywhere, from the time that I was 19 years old. So in college, yes. And then when we moved to the Briarcliff area, Sing Sing is 3 miles up the road. So I I'm looking into moving into Briarcliff, and I get a police report that's like this big of all the sexual offenders in Sing Sing. It was horrific. Uh, so imagine my horror in realizing that there was a predator in my own home, that I had spent a lot of my life protecting children from predators in all the places I suspected them.
For me, it was like, why does somebody dress up as the Easter Bunny for kids to sit on their lap? I was looking in the wrong place too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was quite an eye opener. And my husband is Brian Stryker Weinstein. He is a Yale Law School grad. He's a Duke AP scholar. He's still, ladies and gentlemen, on the board at Duke University Kenan Institute for Ethics. And so I did what any reasonable person who'd been with somebody for over 20 years of their life, we were married for over 18, 3 children, 2 homes, about to buy our 3rd home. I sat down and talked to him like an idiot.
But you're not an idiot.
Well,
you loved him, but I do know that if you suspect somebody is a pedophile and you live with them, it is dangerous to confront them because, as you were saying, all of a sudden it's this revelation of that you're married to someone and you don't really know who they are. So you do have to be careful about confronting anyone. It's not that you're an idiot. You loved him. Yeah. You were faithful and loyal to him. And then this revelation came about and you gave him his fair chance. But it can be dangerous because you don't know who they are.
Listen, I don't want to misrepresent our marriage. We definitely had our ups and downs. So you say you were faithful and loyal to him. I was faithful and loyal to the intent of our marriage, that we sat and talked about our problems and brought them to a head. And that was what I thought was a part of a marriage. Like, I knew people would always make mistakes here and there would be blow ups and things that I couldn't understand about him. But I just thought that was the part, normal part of any marriage. In any case, I confronted him with the children. We sat down and he acknowledged his pedophilia. He agreed that he wanted it to stop. We discussed his indoctrination into the practice. And I was trying to just soft step it. Like, listen, we see who you are now, but I'm holding space for empathy to know that this is not something that somebody would necessarily willingly choose. Like, this was something you abused as a child, you indoctrinated into it, and then you're forced to either confront this horrible pain and torture, or deny that it happened and just try and pretend that this is a normal practice in life and normalize it in society as much as possible. He chose this route. I get it. You chose the wrong way. Now we found out. You don't want to hurt the kids anymore, Brian. You can't gaslight me anymore. You're not going to try and convince me, as he had for years, to trying to say without cause, without reason, that I was a psychiatric patient, which is what pedophiles do, to discredit anybody that they think might come out against them, whether it's another adult or the children or, anybody.
And they usually preemptively do it. They start
Correct.
They start discrediting you before you even know there's anything going on.
Correct.
So that can already be established before you come forward.
Right.
They know that you're starting to catch on, and they work ahead of schedule there.
Right. So they want you to doubt your own reality and not ever, defer to them, which part of the reason I'm so strong now is because I did do all of those things. I played right into his trap. I was a loving, trusting wife who believed that even though I could sense that something was off, when people would say, well, is it possible he's doing something to hurt you? And I was like, never, never. And I tell people that to this day. If you ever met him, you would love him. He's one of the nicest people. He comes off so nice, right? But that's because he has this huge secret life behind him. And so he's doing anything at all possible to present this house of cards to appear non-threatening, kind, caring, sweet. He always gives you his approval. He always gives you his attention. He always gives you his appreciation. And if you don't know any better, you don't understand that those are the tricks by which they can then fool you into trusting them. Okay?
Basically, we know that now in hindsight is he's very deceptive.
Right. But I didn't know that. So at the time, we confronted my husband. He agreed that he was indoctrinated into the practice, that he did not want to hurt my children, did not want to hurt me anymore. and he agreed to stay away from the house and give the children headspace so that they can talk and process and come to their own. My son at the time was going into a senior year, my daughter into her junior year, and my youngest son into his last year of middle school. And the last thing I wanted was any public attention or anything over this. I stupidly and naively thought, as a lawyer, as a Yale Law School grad on the board at Duke University, he was going to stop. I know it sounds so stupid. I really thought he was going to stop. He was going to get help. We were going to maybe not live together, but help support him as much as possible in his rehabilitation and his accountability for his actions and reconciliation. That's really what I thought. And I know that sounds naive and I know that sounds stupid. What instead happened is my husband then went missing the very next morning, used Child Protective Services, out of jurisdiction judge, and dirty cops to kidnap my children, to put me in jail, to put me in a false guardianship, to steal millions of dollars of my assets, to try and drug me, to leave me homeless. I had my rental home set on fire. I had my car run off the road and into a ditch. I had all of my finances cut off. What else did he do?
Your clothes taken.
Oh yeah, I had no clothes for 3 years. Look, I got some clothes back, but I had no clothes for 3 years. For 3 years, I only had the clothes in a bag that I left the house with.
You wore my daughter's hand-me-down
I wore.
shoes.
I did. And this girl actually helped me out and gave me a car after I had my car run off the road and I was totally stranded. Right? I cut off all my finances, put me in this bogus guardianship to claim that after 23 years of managing the entirety of our family's finances, right? With the exception of like some small accounts he did on his own. But I negotiated all of our home sales, the mortgages, the closures, any big purchases with cars, all of our finances. I did our taxes every year. Like, that was me.
And then, not to mention that you orchestrated Catherine's event last night without help, basically, right? I think you
correct.
did it pretty independently, and it went without a hitch. It was a fabulous night, a fabulous vigil for Catherine, and Lizzie's the one that put it together.
But yet I'm incompetent. That's as per the courts.
Financially incompetent.
Well, right. They gave me a guardianship of property, which was petitioned to the court at the time that I had a federal lawsuit against my husband, his lawyer, and the judge and the officers that first put me in jail under the false pretense of not wearing a mask in a public building, which is not a crime, but they called it disorderly conduct, which is still not an offense, which has jail time, okay? And then put me in jail nonetheless with no bail and tried to remand me there for 7 weeks, even though that's all completely against the 2019 Bail Elimination Act, which says under no means can you be in jail for a misdemeanor complaint unless it's for violation of a court order under 215.5 up. Okay, Criminal Procedure Code 215. But all of this, please, to say that I'm incompetent, it's an insult to
Hold on.
tongue.
Wait a minute. Wasn't the court clerk disorderly at the end of the video with the body cam video?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. So this is what's great. So you have to watch the police body cam video of the arrest. So they're saying that they had to arrest me because I was disorderly because I wasn't wearing this mask in a public building. And then the officer, when I was like, I'm not disorderly in any way, like, what are you doing? And I'm telling him that I'm going to record all of this. I'm going to post it on social media. So then he takes his body cam and he turns it away from me, not realizing that he's directing it exactly at a glass door. Mm-hmm. And he starts saying, you're pushing me. And you can see me in the glass door standing, holding my papers with one hand and holding my camera in the other, saying, I'm not disorderly in any way. What are you doing? And I'm not. Slammed me up against the wall, slapped handcuffs on me, chained me to a wall in the police station, Briarcliff Manor, New York. After which they then trafficked me into the Valhalla jail, where I was strip searched, denied an opportunity to call a lawyer, put in solitary confinement, right? Locked in by myself, said that I was suicidal. Why? Because when you're suicidal, they can keep the lights on the whole time. They can deny you a pen and a paper. They can say that you can't have a book. They can do things to mess with you, to make you appear stressed out and crazy, or to force you to have a mental breakdown while you're in there. You understand? It's just sick. It's sadistic, and it's cowardly. These people are cowards.
And I've known you quite some time.
Yes.
And I've read pretty much all your legal papers
Yeah.
at some point or
Mhm.
another.
Yeah, she takes the time to make sure she does her research. Yes.
And never once have I ever witnessed you suicidal.
like they're like, okay, she's bipolar, and I'm like, bipolar? When am I ever depressed? I'm literally like this all the time. I'm loud. I'm usually loud. Yes, fair. I'm loud. I curse like a truck driver. Fair. Okay. And I'm vivacious, energetic. That's how I am.
You know what?
Okay.
You're direct too.
I'm
and sometimes it gets you
excessively direct.
right. Sometimes it gets you in trouble. Not like you're in trouble, but sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. So being, close with Lizzie, and sometimes she calls me out, and you know what? I take it though, because actually you're usually right.
No, don't worry. But here's the thing. With all due respect, this bogus use of manufactured psychiatric subjective bullshit as a means by which to strip parents of custody of their children when there is never, ever been even a claim of any type of abuse of a child by that parent is disgusting. It's horrible. It is nothing other than it's kidnapping. We're going to come and we're going to kidnap your kids, and we're just going to make something up afterwards. And because you've never really done anything, and you're a known entity in the town, and you're so influential, and we're just going to say you had a breakdown. Does that work? Does anybody revolt? Do they let us keep your kid? All right, that's what we're going to do. And it's the same bullshit story over and over and over again. And it's an insult to our intelligence. It's disgusting. So CPS, what role did CPS play? The role that CPS played, and oh gosh, I have to get my phone to figure out the name of the woman who was our CPS worker. I might want to get that, because it's really important to name names in this, because we need accountability for people and what they're doing.
They
Let me do
don't
that.
like us doing that part.
Who doesn't like you doing it? Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. All right, hold please. Okay, so, and that was a chance to show my fabulous shirt, right? So fabulous. Anyways, the name of the CPS worker is, well, I'll find that in a minute. But the role that CPS played is this. I had a very, very bizarre way that CPS was brought into our home, which is, it began by my husband calling the police himself. And now a million red flags should have gone off in my head to say,
I was just going to say,
oh, if he's calling them, then
They're his
perhaps they're not there to protect me. Perhaps they're there to protect. But nobody would think that. No rational person who's never had any interaction with the court or cops, who has been indoctrinated for all years of my life to believe that police are there to help us, right, would believe, and that police hate pedophiles. Isn't that also one of the major things that they teach us, right? The police hate pedophiles, and that pedophile goes to jail and they get destroyed once they're in jail. Not true. So, and I've been there, I can tell you. So what happened is, my husband left the home and agreed to give my children their headspace, and not speak to my children, but that they would be allowed free reign to call him at any time. So I'm not restricting, and this is very important to me, I don't restrict my child's right to access their parent. But when I find that a parent is abusing the child, the parent's right to access their victim should, in those ways, be stopped. They don't have a right to sexually or physically or emotionally abuse somebody just because they're their parent. They don't. Okay. And this entitlement, like it's my kid, I can do what I want, mind your own business, has got to go. Okay. But even if I know that my husband was abusing my children, my 17-year-old, remember that's a much different age, 17, almost 16 and 13 at the time that it happened. If they once said to me, Mom, we really want to speak to Dad, not only I continually asked them, don't you want to call him? Don't you want? And they were like, no, we're good. We're good. Which was horrific for me because it was just, I was still in shock. Everything happened so quickly within a matter of hours, days and hours from what I found,
It's bittersweet because, I had the same thing happen to me too. And it's bittersweet because in one sense, you're like, okay, these things that I thought were going on, I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when your children are verbalizing, this is what happened, it's heartbreaking. It's traumatizing and paralyzing to the core.
Yes.
It's one of those days when the kids say something to you like that. Don't ask anything of me because I'm spent. Like it's so paralyzing.
It's emotionally draining.
Yeah. So
and I didn't have that experience of like, oh, I'm valid with the thoughts that I had, because I never once considered that my law partner husband, my Yale Law School graduate, my Duke AB scholar, my board member at the Keenan Institute for Ethics would actually be a pedophile. I didn't consider it.
We're taught something different too, right? Because you look at like the sex offender registry, and it's always like kind of Captain Obvious. He looks kind of scary.
Yes, exactly.
And the random female in there too,
Mm-hmm.
and they appear for the most part, not every single one, but for the most part, they appear like if you left your kids with that person, there's something wrong with you too.
Right.
But so society has this wrong impression of what the presentation of a pedophile might be like.
Correct.
So we know from research that it's not socioeconomically defined. We know that it's not culturally, religiously defined. But the sex offender registry looks like, well, hey, we can know because look at these guys. This is what it looks like, and we're fooled.
Right. I just found out the name. I'm sorry, I was looking it up. I agree with everything that you just said, and it's just it's the usual suspects. We want you to look anywhere but to the person who is actually guilty of it, right? So don't look in the home. Don't look in to the people that are most intimately involved, right? And those are always, that's where it begins. And even if a child gets sexually abused when they're a teenager, it's most often because the predator knew them to be a good victim for them. Those predators groom their victims. They look for who is showing signs that they are vulnerable people who have previously been abused, and they know they're trusting, they know how to get them in those vulnerable situations, and they know how to proceed with them. So just because a child, they're like, oh no, they were never abused when they were younger, but they were abused by a next door neighbor when they were 14. Well, it's likely they were abused by somebody within the family before then. And the family, and this is also something that I learned that it took me a long time to adjust to. I guess I had this weird preconceived notion that if somebody was a pedophile, that they wanted their victims to themselves, that they wouldn't share. And it turns out it's the opposite. If you are a pedophile, you then, a pedophile father, wants to bring his children around as many other pedophiles as possible so that child normalizes that practice.
And back to the sex offender registry too, it's arguable that the people that are on there are far less dangerous because the ones that aren't on there are the lawyers, are the judges, are the police officers, are the former CPS attorneys.
And existing CPS attorneys.
Because those are the most dangerous because they're using their positions of authority to gain trust.
Yes. They abuse the public trust in order to commit their crimes.
Right.
And public trust, and we pay them to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we do? What are we thinking? Hello? Stop paying your employees to commit crimes against us. Like, it's insane. Terry and McLennan. So let's talk about DSS's role in the kidnapping and trafficking of my children to their pedophile father. So DSS, Terry Ann McLennan, was what happened was my husband was staying at a hotel. This was the night of, I believe it was May 20th or 21st of 2020 when this all happened. My husband was staying in a hotel, and I have text exchanges between he and I where at first he was very cold, and he's like, I'm like, I know this is going to be hard for you. I mean, I'm so stupid. I know this is going to be hard for you. We want to do what we can. We love you. We know this happened to you too, Brian. Like, let's just do the right thing here. Thank you for being brave and strong. Do you want me to bring you clothing? He says no. Then he writes back and says, okay. And I was like, great. Thank you for letting me do. What do you want? Well, again, in my naivete, I'm thinking, okay, he's just trying to like adjust to this idea that he's been found out and he's not, because it seems so undeniable. He's
At
not
the
going to,
time.
right. And that there's no way that Davis Polk would keep him on as a partner, never mind that he'd be on the ethics board at Duke after all this information comes out, right? Because that seems ridiculous. And then you realize that all the major educational institutions are promoting the hypersexualization and the sexual perversions of our children to become androgynous beings, but it's a whole other story. Nonetheless, I'm thinking he's rationalizing this to think that the easiest way is to just come clean, be a good person, and heal. And so I'm packing all of his favorite things, his favorite poetry book, his favorite clothes, yada, 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 not knowing that the whole thing was a setup, that he had our babysitter, who was a babysitter for 17 years, since, my youngest, 16, since my youngest son at the time was one. My oldest son was one. We had this one person, Luz Luzato, come to the house. So he had privately, behind the scenes, contacted Luz. I had told him that I wasn't comfortable leaving the kids alone, so I was having this trusted person stay at the home while I went to bring Brian his things to the hotel. And during that time, it was all a setup for him to contact Luz, have Luz force the children to speak to him on the phone, and then get his claws back in the kids again, right? Horrific. Didn't know it. Stupid. Probably should have considered it. He goes and we're sitting at the hotel, and I'm asking to look through his phone. I'm like, show me your phone as a sign of trust, Brian, because he was working with a marriage counselor by the name of Jeffrey Dyke, who is out of Ardsley, who I also know is somebody that these pedophiles hire to gaslight people. But like, if you don't live in this world, like, you just don't think that somebody would spend this much time trying to harm somebody that they purport to love, right? Like, I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking, how do I make my kid's life more fun? How do I make my husband feel more loved? How do I like make things special for everybody around me? Like, and he's like, oh fuck, how do I make her doubt herself? How do I convince her that she's a psychiatric patient so that I can sexually abuse our children and not have her tell on me? I mean,
Very self-preserving they are.
yes.
That their needs and desire to cover up their secret
Yes.
is far more important than any person they know.
Correct. And they dehumanize anybody that they're using as a pawn, and they are so easily able to justify any of their behavior. And so Brian, I guess in his, I don't know why, I don't want to speak to his intent. I just asked him to see his phone because I was like, you've been working with this guy, Jeffrey Dyke, to have me falsely committed? Like, that's stupid. Come on. Nobody's going to believe I'm crazy. I'm a Columbia University graduate. I'm an ERI student. I have no psych history. Like, what are you fucking doing, Brian? Like, gigs up. Like, and you've been trying to tell people that
you have no history of psych hospitalization.
Right.
No history, any documented history of suicidal thoughts, ideations,
Right.
or, no documented history.
But he's just, this is all purported by a scared, cowardly pedophile who's like, how can I possibly discredit this very loud, cursing, fun, sometimes obnoxious woman. Well, I'll just claim she's bipolar. But even if I was,
Yeah,
even
like
if I was,
like 7 million Americans have bipolar
no,
disorder.
no, 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 no,
It's
no,
a
no,
lot.
no.
It's prevalent.
7 million Americans have been diagnosed by somebody. I now, having seen the other side of this industry, believe that many of those people themselves are victims of either child sexual abuse or they're being gaslight by another adult who's abusing somebody in the area to try to discredit them. I don't know that 7 million people have it, but that is the number that we report. And the point is, it is a protected class under the American with Disabilities Association. So the American with Disabilities Act. So even if somebody had that, that in and of itself
isn't a reason to take the
it's
test.
never a reason. It's the dumbest fucking thing. Okay. So he's trying to claim that I'm bipolar. And how does my bipolar manifest? By saying that somebody is sexually abusing my children.
Which is counterintuitive too, because then this is saying that if somebody is legitimately bipolar, that their disclosures can never be believed, which is horrific if 7 million Americans have that diagnosis.
I mean, it's just everybody, you understand, you see the circular argument, you see the absurdity of it all. It's just an insult to our intelligence. So
what did CPS do?
Oh gosh. So I asked my husband for his phone. He gives me his phone. And then in the middle of me looking through it and seeing that he's gone through and deleted every single message that he ever had between he and I and this quote unquote marriage counselor that he was using to try and gaslight me, I think he must have realized, oh Jesus, I called Luz on that phone and she's going to see. And he starts freaking out. He starts yelling, police! Police! Call the police! She has my phone. I mean, and you've seen these videos. He looks deranged. He's like this. His eyes get really big. Police!
Well,
it's
not only that, but
crazy.
If you find that your spouse has, child pornography on their laptop or their computer, what's the natural thing for a concerned parent to do? Is to go through the electronics and see, is there something else? Or even take the electronics to a private investigator. It would be normal if you find something to see what more is there. So instead, in this situation where Lizzie did a normal, natural thing, Brian went and got an ex parte temporary order of protection against Lizzie.
That goes on later, but first we'll go to the CPS part, which was this. So he then calls. So the front desk at the hotel person called CPS. Now this was at the very, very beginning of this COVID bullshit, right? I don't know what you believe, but I want to tell you it was biological and psychological warfare to destabilize our markets, destabilize our economies, make people afraid to be around each other, not be close to each other, which is how we actually help each other heal, right? And get us into a state of fear, which is makes us more easily manipulated. So I, being an ER ICU trained nurse and understanding what was going on and seeing it for the bullshit that it was, a week earlier was walking around outside. Now we're talking about May of 2020, walking around outside, of course not without a mask on. I'm outside. Like what do you? And I got harassed by the Tarrytown police who threatened, came at me, put their hands on their gun and started saying, like, you better put on a mask or you better this. And I was like, or what? You're going to arrest me? And I was like, then give me a ticket if it's a ticketed offense. But there's no law against walking around outside. What are you talking about? And I said, oh, what? You're going to arrest me? And two cops came up and put their hands on the gun and said, I'm going to do a lot more than that. Okay? It's the first time that I really became fearful of the police. So in the middle of this is now a week later, I'm thinking I have to keep this situation private because I want to protect my kids. And I'm trying to manage something so that I can hopefully resolve this with my husband without some traumatic family exposure that he can heal and get better, right? And instead, he's calling the police. And I said to him, if the police come, Brian, I will not lie about what we were just talking about. I will not protect you. You know the Tarrytown police. You know that they were just overbearing last week. You know, and police hate pedophiles. You're going to get in so much trouble if they come, and I can't protect you anymore. And then Brian turns to the woman and says, to the office manager, says, you know what? It's okay. Don't call the police. Don't call the police. And he takes his bag and he goes upstairs. And so then as I'm about to walk out, the police are walking in and they say, what was this all about? And I have no interaction with the police. I'm like a law-abiding citizen. Yes, I'm loud. Yes, I'm
You were
fun.
never arrested
But like,
ever before?
no, I mean, come on. Like, the worst thing I joked, the worst thing that I did was I snuck down from the cheat seats to the floor at the Jimmy Buffett concert in like 1988 or something like that at Foxborough Stadium, right? And as I'm climbing down to sneak down, that some guy's like helping me get down. I'm so thankful, and I turn around looking. It's a security guard. And I start bawling. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal. I didn't mean to. And he's like, go ahead, go on the lawn, you're fine, right? That was the limited, exposure to my criminal history prior to this. And so I said, you really want to involve the police? I'm going to tell them the truth. The police came. They said, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't want to tell you. And they said, what were you talking about? And so then I told them. I said, I believe my husband's a pedophile. And we're talking, and then the police got involved, and then the police called CPS. Okay. So the next morning at 7 a.m, Child Protective Services shows up at my home where I am with my children. And I am furious because they want to wake my children up who are just gone through this horrific traumatic experience. They want to wake my children up and they want to interview them. And I said, my children are asleep. We're working this out within the family. My husband's going to get help. And I'm trying to just make the situation go away. Okay. Terry Ann McLennan then shows up later at about 3:00. And foolishly, I invite her into my home. I show her around the whole place. I let her interview the children. And we're all there, we're trying to minimize our conversation about Brian and just maximize that they are safe, they are handling this well, that they feel safe under my sole care, that their dad is getting help, and there's not a problem. That's it. Okay. Over the next 2 weeks, Terry Ann McLennan then became an agent for Brian. And I know this because I have communications. Remember, Brian left his iPad and he left his phone at home. I mean, he is clearly in a traumatic state. He's not thinking, and he's running around just like a chicken with his head cut off, because he knows that he's been truly exposed to it. He's panicking. He left the house. These are marital properties. He has all of my passwords. I have all of his because I've been married to this guy. I was with him for over 20 years at the time, 21 years. Married for 18. We had 3 kids together. I didn't think there was anything to hide, which is why it was so easy the very first time that I went to look for something, but I didn't think it was this, that I found everything. Because he lived out in the open. These pedophiles live out in the open because they think the rest of us are too stupid or too naive.
Or maybe it's just, they
trusting.
They protect their secret quite a bit, but on the other hand, it's quite the secret to keep every day of your life, 365 days a year. Maybe you do just get sloppy with your...
Yeah, maybe you do. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not a pedophile. I don't understand how they
I had my husband's passwords too.
Yeah, and did you look?
I looked. I took his iPad to a private investigator, and, and I found his journal, and he journaled in there about using force on our child and so forth, and it was in there.
Yeah.
But of course, nobody cares about evidence.
No, because the people who condone and protect pedophiles and who are looking to traffic children are the ones that exist within our judicial system that we think protects them. Stupid. It's absolutely stupid. So anyways, Terry Ann McLennan then for the next 2 weeks became an agent of Brian's. So
you found this out because what's the communication you found?
So the communication was that, first of all, Brian reached out to her and said, hi, Terry Ann, I understand you're meeting with my wife. Because I called him and I was like, you you fucking asshole, look at what you did. Now that you're bringing these people into our children's lives, like Max is going into his senior year, he doesn't need this. Like my daughter, junior year, like I said, what are you doing to our family, Brian? What are you doing, Brian Stricker Weinstein? What are you doing? What are you doing? What is Davis Polk going to say about this? What is Duke University going to say about this? What is Yale Law School going to say about this? Turns out nothing, and he knew it, right? Turns out he knew that they protect him, right?
They know this.
But we don't know that on the other side.
Yeah.
But anyways, so what ended up happening is Terry Ann McLennan arranged a meeting. Now remember, she's trying to find out whether or not there's any ongoing concern with Brian right now to account for his pedophilia. So she is trying to um, meet with him. But he asked her to schedule a meeting on that Wednesday, the following Wednesday. She came to us Saturday morning. Then all of the meetings with me were like, oh my God, you're so brave. Oh my, just gaslighting me and gaslighting me and gaslighting me to trust her. Oh, let me come and have an interview with the kids again. Let me meet with them separately. Let me go into your home. Let me do that. Can you just fill out this form? Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's nothing. And there were a couple lawyers that I had contacted at that time. I can't even remember their names. And
at least you did that. Some people are so trusting they don't even think to do that.
Well, it was because I knew my husband was a lawyer and this was all very scary. And so what happened is I contacted these lawyers and they said, whatever you do not let them in your home.
Oops.
Whatever you do not try. And I said to them,
they're so nice.
This is why God picked me for this fight, because I believe in humanity and I trust people. And I know that they're going to see how safe my children are, how we are able to manage this as a family, how Brian can heal. Like, we don't have to throw the stone around all the pedophiles and throw them into the water. They can heal. If only we show them empathy and kindness and give them a path to redemption, they'll take it. These are good people that were themselves. I could not have been more wrong. So this woman began trying to trick me into filling out forms, medical release forms, knowing that Brian had hired a woman by the name of Catherine Michaels to falsify medical documents to try to claim that I was a psych patient. And that Brian had hired a company by the name of O'Connor Professional Group. O'Connor Professional Group is a for-hire service that'll get anybody you want, put away in a psych hospital. You got somebody you abused, victim, somebody that knows too much about your crimes, no problem. Give them to us. Falsify all the documents. We'll say we met them. We'll talk about appointments that they had, even though that they have a court transcript at the exact same date and exact same time as the appointment. So it's impossible that they were here when you said that they were here. And we'll get them falsely committed. We'll have the police. Come on, it's easy breezy. The police just come and pick them up and say that there's a concern of suicide. That's all. That's all they have to do. Snap handcuffs on them, drop them right off. All those doctors that you think would never lie because their medical license would be at risk. Nope. You know why?
I'm a physician assistant. I read the documents and it's not any way I would practice.
Yeah, it's all bullshit. But the point is, in order to hold these doctors responsible, who do we turn to? The judges. You have to get a judge to declare that a doctor committed malpractice or malfeasance against you and used his power to falsely have you committed. Now, when the judges are the ones trafficking the children, and this is their mechanism by which they protect their child trafficking services because they can just lie and say everybody's crazy, that talks about the truth, they're certainly not going to then arrest and lie. I mean, arrest and commit to jail the very people that are helping them get the child trafficking done. So anyways,
well, it's the time of what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right.
Yes. Yeah. So Terry Ann McLennan duped me. And then I started getting wind of things that didn't make sense. Brian had submitted this affidavit to the court and had requested sole custody of our children while he is missing and under a pedophilia investigation. This is really important to remember. My children are with me. They have been affirmed safe in my sole care, and I have let DSS, which is Department of Social Services, or CPS as you call it, the Briarcliff Police, many other local friends and family of ours, into our home, who have all confirmed that the children were safe. They would come over and like swim in our pool. This was in May, early June now of 2020. They'd swim in our pool. We'd have dinner. We'd sit around and talk, and I'd say, "Isn't it amazing that my children are dealing with such stress, and look at how powerful they are. Look at how wonderful they are. Look at how they're dealing with this. Like, they know that it's going to be okay. They know that I'm going to keep them safe." And then one night, June 1st, I get this knock on the door, and my husband's been missing, and he's unresponsive. And this is after I found all the documents where he was trying to use O'Connor Professional Group, Diana Clark, and others, and Jeff Dyke, to have me falsely committed against my will. I thought it was just that one time back on May 20th when he did it, and then I found the stuff on his phone. But now I found I found the contracts that he paid. I found the list of hospitals where he told them that they could take me, all with people that I never met. I have no psychiatric concerns whatsoever. And his example, or his proof of my psychiatric state, was that I claimed that he was a pedophile. That's it. That I claimed that he's a pedophile is clear evidence to him that I'm in need of direct inpatient psychiatric care. So, and he filed that then in a brief to the court and asked that I be placed in a long-term care facility, and forced medication over objection is the only way to help me.
Just to go back a little bit, I did an interview on another woman who, her nephew, the birth mother lived in Buffalo, New York, and died. And a stranger pedophile who previously sexually abused this couple's children filed in court for custody, with him having been indicated as a pedophile before and having a restraining order that just expired. But he took custody of the kids while the father was trying to come home from Kentucky, and he filed in court to get custody of the kids. So it seems obnoxious. Why would a pedophile file for custody while they're under investigation? Or in this case, was a known pedophile, a stranger, not even the kid's father, petitioning to the courts. And it's not because they're confused. It's because they have the impression they can get away with this because sometimes it does work.
It works all the time. There's a case of Alicia Clark, who you can actually look up her case, even though it's normally family court and sealed and quiet, as we all know. You can look up her case because her case went to the appellate courts, to the third department in New York State, which is up in the Albany area. She married a guy and soon found out that he was a registered sex offender.
And he was a lawyer too, right?
I don't think he was a lawyer. No, he was a boudoir photographer. Took boudoir photos of children and adults.
But Alicia was in law school, I think is what.
Well, she either got involved or needed to get involved because of all of this. But anyways, she was identified as kind of a Buddhist religion, right? But fully had all of her kids vaccinated, was involved in the school systems and the healthcare systems, and so when they were filed for divorce, she went to file, and then he begged her not to. And so she said, okay, let's talk. And I don't know, I'm just so confused. And then the next day he went and filed because he knew that it would come off as an advantage
if he was the plaintiff.
That if he was a plaintiff in the case. So then what happened is she got custody of the kids because he's a registered sex offender. Makes sense, right?
What's wrong is right.
6 months later, the attorney for children went to court and said, Your Honor, I'm sorry, but Alicia, she's a Buddhist. And sometimes Buddhists don't like taking their children to get medical exams or shots. So we think custody
Should go to the registered sex.
should go to the registered sex offender. And Alicia's like, what
And
the hell are we talking about? Like,
and her story is public, and she
Yes.
shares it, and she still doesn't have custody. The registered sex offender does.
they gave the custody of the children, it gets worse, to the registered sex offender who was living with a registered S&M madam and their sex slave. And there are pictures of the madam riding the sex slave dressed up like a horse, wearing hooves, wearing a feed bag on his face, naked with like a black leather thing. And this is who the children are with. So not only did they kidnap her children, but they violated her religious freedom. So what? We're just going to go around and take children away from any? If you're a Buddhist, you're going to be sterilized now? It makes no sense. So she filed in the third department in the appellate court to say, first of all, you cannot take my children away based on religious freedom, and second of all, like, you can't deny me my rights to parent my child and traffic them to a registered sex offender.
But back to your case.
But wait, let me just finish
Go
this.
ahead.
She lost. Lost. Denied her. He still has a case. So this issue of my husband being under an active pedophilia investigation and filing while he's missing, okay? I'm with the children. The children are firm, safe in my care by CPS, by the police, by multiple people. The children themselves who are of age in New York State, that's 13 or above, they're 13, a month away from 16, and 17 and a half, all say we're safe with our mom. Our dad left the house after we talked about him being a pedophile, and we want to stay with our mom. Okay? He goes and files for an ex parte order of protection. Using what? That I was crazy? No. Saying that I wrote a lot of emails to him. Yes. And those emails caused him to be nervous, anxious, distracted, and fearful.
And I read that temporary order of protection application.
Everybody can see it. It's ridiculous. It's a paragraph. It's about 80 words. So he's acknowledging his own psychiatric disturbance. I'm nervous, anxious, sleepless, distracted, and fearful.
But they go after the lady that wrote emails. But there's
and I didn't even write a lot. I mean, he was missing. I thought he was killing himself. Didn't realize until later.
Worried. You were legitimately concerned and worried for him while he's mistreating you.
I mean, we're talking about maybe 10 emails in 5 days. I mean, it's so stupid.
But what I want to get to is the part that you told me that you wanted the caseworker changed, but the communication that happened.
Okay. So what happened is we have this Terry and McLennan. I get served this order, and then they say that they have to. I'm sorry, I thought I just heard a knock on the door. Sorry. So they say that they have to have a hearing, but it's a preliminary conference. It's going to be and then they assign me a lawyer. I was like, you can't assign me a lawyer. I don't qualify for a court-appointed attorney when I'm the wife of a multimillionaire. Like, we're multimillionaires. I'm the wife of a law partner. I can get my own attorney, thank you. And they said, nope, you have to use this guy, Marco Fava. So Marco Fava was a victim, was a agent of my husband's, right? Trying to take my voice and speak for Brian. Then Terry McLennan is hired by Brian to speak for. And then I find out that Brian hired an attorney for the children, Gloria Marchetti Brock, who's also speaking as Brian's agent. We get to this bogus hearing. My children come and they say, we don't want to go with our dad. He left after we talked about his pedophilia. We're safe with their mother. The judge says, I'm not going to hear from you. And I've already made up my mind, but let me hear from DSS first. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to do a preliminary conference today. We're going to have a whole hearing, a whole custody hearing. Now, at the exact same time that he filed this custody hearing, Administrative Order AO 7820 was in effect, which stated that custody petitions of any kind, written or electronic, could not be accepted because of COVID. They were not accepting any new custody petitions unless they had prior approval by the administrative judge and 2 signatures in advance, which had to accompany the petition, none of which happened. Okay? My husband just showed up and said, I don't want divorce. I just only want custody of my kids. And then I want you to give her full order of protection against her, even though I'm going to say in the petition, which she can verify is true, there's no concern of harm. She would never harm the kids. She's a wonderful, safe mother.
It did say that in there.
But there's, what was the word? Not turmoil. What was the word in the house? There's,
just anxiety.
No. There's a specific word that he used.
Hysteria?
No. It wasn't hysteria. It was like, there's gosh, I can't forget that. I'm gonna forget the word.
I don't know.
But it's similar to turmoil. There's turmoil in the house. I need full custody of my kids, and I'm gonna file a custody petition when I'm not allowed to. The judge then has no hearing, says that it's a hearing. CPS comes on and says there's no indication of any abuse of any kind. In writing, they put the report in, but I don't know, maybe the mother's crazy, and I don't know, maybe she should get help if she wants it. Okay?
There's only a minute left.
Okay, they took the kids away. I then later went and filed with CPS to demand that I showed all the conversations that this woman had preemptively with my husband. I said this is a conflict of interest, that she's not evaluating his pedophilia, and she didn't have a legal right to give my children to a person undergoing a pedophilia investigation. That if they were going to give my children to anybody, they would have had to go on to a family member or to foster care, but not back to my husband, and that I wanted Terry Ann McLennan moved. And the supervisor of all of New York State Child Protective Services wrote me back an email and said, I'm sorry, but Mr. Weinstein likes Terry Ann McLennan. And he's got custody of the kids right now, so if he wants her, I know she's supposed to be investigating him, but he really likes her, so we're going to say, I kid you not, that's what it says. I'm going to send you the email so you can post it. It's crazy. So that's a whole bunch of info.
Well, thank you, Lizzie, for coming on. Our time is up here. So I just really want to thank you. People have been asking how you're doing, what's been going on, and this is pretty much your first time talking publicly, other than Catherine's vigil, of course, since, these horrible encounters.
Since I was arrested on July 3rd, originally, of 2022 for posting a picture of my children when there was no active order of protection in place, none that was served, and I was placed in jail for 95 days. Then a judge who is a co-defendant was a co-defendant in a related party, and a federal case that I filed said, associated my husband's, just a guy, a lawyer in our town, and my husband's on the board of the town, said that I was incompetent to stand trial because I was objecting to his order and appealing it. It's insane. We are living in an insane world. And until we stand up and use our voice to call out these despicable criminals who hide in our judiciary in order to commit crimes, none of us are safe. So we have to call this out. We need to be brave. We need to be strong. And we need to create a better world for our children than the one that we're living in right now. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you, guys. Bye.